Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's right on time, 9 o'clock. And I hope all of you are happy and healthy. And it's really an honor to have you all here. Right now, we have like 42 participants, including the speakers and also including me. And basically, we're here for a webinar entitled Humanizing Online Learning. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Maria Tamarina Prawati, so people just usually call me Maria. And I am one of the lecturers in English Department, Bina Nusantara University. On behalf of the organizers, English Department, BINUS, Bina Nusantara University, and also in collaboration with GreatNusa, which is also part of Bina Nusantara University, I'd like to extend once again warm welcome to everybody here. So basically, this webinar is our second Kijang Academic Sharing Series this year. So this webinar series has been started last year, and this year Humanizing Online Learning is our second webinar. And we hope that this webinar series will be a continuous learning forum for pre-service teachers and also in-service teachers, right? I can see that you come from different affiliations, and I'd like to invite you to rename your ID, right, into full name, and then you can put down underscore your location or affiliations. So we hope that you can rename your ID, and this is related to the certificate and administration matters. Now, before we go to the main session, I hope that you can mute your microphone during the sessions. And also, once again, if you come from BINUS, right? If you come from, if you're BINUSian, you are invited to put your ID, student's ID if you're students, and then lecturer's ID if you're lecturer, before your full name. And if you are external participants, if you're respected participants from different institutions, you can put down your full name and then underscore or dash location or affiliation. Later on, right, after all of the speaker sessions, you are invited to drop your questions in the chat room. And please don't hesitate to drop it to Miss Ayu. So Miss Ayu is one of our colleague here, and she will be the one in charge for the question and answer, to accommodate the question and answer sessions. Basically, her ID is IU_BINUS. And when you drop the questions, don't forget to put down your full name, location or affiliations, and then the questions itself. Okay. The rest of the house rules later on will be posted by the administrator. We have Pak Nico as our support, as our administration support here. And basically, we also have some of our colleagues. So if you see ID and then full name, they are our colleague from different departments in BINUS. Some of them, they come also from English literature or English department BINUS. So it's a great honor once again to have you all here. And I hope you can stay till the end of the sessions. We'll do the most favorite things in the session, which is taking picture in the end of the sessions. And along with us, we have also the head of department, Pak Irfan Rifai, and also the other two speakers, Ibu Finita, Dewi, and also Pak Willy Renandya. Okay, yeah. Blessed morning, everyone. And right now, we have Pak Irfan is opening the camera already. I guess he's ready for for the first session. Will Finita as well. Big smile for us, and I can see Pak Willy here. So this webinar, as I mentioned previously, will be well, we'll discuss a lot about how is it possible to humanize online learning, how is it with online learning, and the the tips and trick and all of the best practices. But first of all, I'd like to introduce our head of department, Pak Irfan Rifai, Ph.D, as the head of department one, and also second role as the first speaker. And basically, Pak Irfan started his role as the head of department at English department BINUS starting from 2019. It's not last year anymore, Pak Irfan. It's been year and a half, so time goes by. And he started his role as the head of department right after his graduation. Is that right, Pak Irfan? So after the PhD program in 2019, and your PhD is in reading and literacy from the Ohio State University, he starting the role as head of department, and then after that also as educators, as teacher, right, in our department, and also as scholar. So basically, if I may introduce Pak Irfan, his study and teaching focus more on the professional development. And reading and literacy is basically the main focus of his research and also his concern. Basically, the work itself is also integrated in the community development as well, right, Pak Irfan? So you work a lot on reading and literacy. And as a professional, he has facilitated a couple of teacher professional development program in different kind of institutions. Sometimes he also jumps into industry. It's not only school or university, but also to the industry. More interesting things, he also gained experience as a translator, as editor. I guess you have everything on your CV. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Media and Communication. And furthermore, he currently plays significant role on digital transformation project in our Faculty of Humanities. So today, as I mentioned, today he will be one of the opening speakers on this webinar sessions, and he will also give the opening remark. He will officially open this webinar session. So without further ado, Pak Irfan, I'd like to give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Maria. That's such a nice, what is it? A nice introduction, yeah. So I think everyone, I really asked Bu Maria to mention all of those. I'm just kidding. Okay, so first of all, welcome everyone to our second webinar this year. We call this KASS. So it sounds like a radio station, but it is not. So it's a Kijang Academic Sharing series. It's Kijang is one of the BINUS campuses in Kemanggisan area in Jakarta. It's one of the smallest, but to us, it's one closest to our hearts because it's so green, and then we just love hanging out there and teaching there as well. And looking forward to having the opportunity of our students coming back to the classes, if not this year, then next year. Okay, so welcome again. I hope you will find this webinar useful for you, for your personal development and professional development as well. So I would like to thank Pak Willy and Bu Finita for especially making time for us, the English Department of BINUS University, and share their knowledge and experience and in teaching, in inspiring other people to improve their practices in teaching. So we know Pak Willy very well. To many of us, to most of us, he is our guru. And then we learn not only from his publications, but also from his writings. Yeah. So no, sorry, not only from his publication, but also from his speeches, like his sharing knowledge sessions everywhere. Yeah. So thank you, Pak Willy, for making time. And also, I would like to thank Bu Finita, yeah, an old friend of mine, and then to whom I have shared, the experience of learning together, and then sharing our share of knowledge to some people in Indonesia. Yeah. So thank you, Bu Finita, for making time as well for us and share your knowledge in terms of humanizing online learning. So that will be the topic of our discussion. And then we had a bit of chat, and then we tried to actually try to come up with our sort of understanding of what we define by humanizing online learning. So I think this is, I'm going to start a little bit and talking about a little bit of my experience in my efforts to try to humanize the online learning. Okay, so if I could share my PowerPoint presentation now, Miss Maria. Okay. So okay. So what I'm going to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, is actually our experience in having or conducting a virtual book online. So we didn't have it as a fully virtual book, but we call it book/movie discussion. Not because we were not quite confident by using only book, but because also we found that a movie is also a very resourceful way or resourceful medium for us to try to initiate a dialogue with students, with basically everyone. Yeah. So I'll start with asking these questions to all of us. Yeah. Now I believe if you have used Zoom and you have used Google Meet or Teams or other video conference tools, I believe then you might have experienced this. Okay. All right. So that would probably us, that gentleman with the suits represent us, with the green lines over there, and then yeah, and then having too many students are not available with their video on or their cameras on. Yeah, so this is one experience that I believe most of us have experienced. If you have been exposed to using Zoom and other video conference tools. Yeah. Now I want to learn your experience on how to cope with this. Yeah, I would like to know. So if you don't mind, if you could, do a Mentimeter survey. Yeah, if you could access this, and then I will share with every one of us the result of our response. How do you respond when students turn off their cameras? You start the day, and then, to teach in the classes with the students virtually, and you are using one of those video conference applications, and all the students turn off their cameras. Most of the students turn off their cameras. What have you done about this? How have you responded to that kind of situation? I would like to hear it from you, ladies and gentlemen. If you could share, and I'm going to share with you the result of the survey, so we can all learn together. Yeah, Miss Maria, if you could please share also the link, perhaps in the chat, if our friends or colleagues are having difficulty in trying to access it.
Okay, Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, I dropped the link for the Mentimeter already on the chat room.
Yeah.
You're invited to join to the www.menti.com.
Okay, but if you're comfortable with just using the QR code over there, just aim your phone and then access it from there. Okay. All right. Let's give it some time now, and I'm going to show you the result. In a minute. Okay. Okay, so here are your responses. Thank you for responding. Okay. 7 of us asked them to turn on their videos. Yeah, students, please turn on your videos. Okay, and then the majority of us for now believe that, hey, I don't mind. I understand that might have some problems, having videos. I don't want to hassle them for, for the things that they cannot do. Okay, the majority of us for now. And then 10 of us, you ask them to turn on the videos just to say hello. Yeah. Hey guys, can you please just turn on the videos? I just want to say hello, and then I just want to make sure that I'm dealing with a person here. I'm dealing with a student here. I'm not dealing with your paths or with anything. Yeah. So if that's how you respond, then that's how you respond. Yeah. I don't pass judgment, but thank you for feeling this. But most of us believe that, hey, I don't mind. They can turn off their videos. Yeah. They might have problems with it, and then we can just trust our students with it. So if that is the way you respond to this kind of situation, thank you. So thank you for sharing, Bapak Ibu, and then ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. So again, these are your options. Yeah. So you can identify your students. You see what is happening. You trust them, and the way you choose your action to respond to the situation is entirely yours. Yeah. So I think if you don't feel this, perhaps, hey, I don't have the choice here. What I have usually been doing is not there. So that's fine as well. But anyway, thank you for sharing your response to that situation. So I'm just gonna go and move on with the next slide. Okay. Now, if you ask me why discussion and why book and movie, yeah. So I think I'm quoting someone. I think he is a psychologist, and then he studies a lot of discourse, but for the perspective of making meaning. Yeah, he said that discussion or talk, yeah, is valuable enough to play with, powerful enough to change behavior without force. Yeah, sometimes because we insist we want to see them to turn on their videos, then we say things that usually are quite forceful. Yeah, so we say things like, please turn on your videos, otherwise, yeah, things like that, perhaps. Yeah, but there are ways to actually say those things without having to say them explicitly. Yeah, and then a lot of people have shown us how to do it. Also, why books and movies? Yeah, so personally, I found that movies and books are very potentially strong medium or media for us to start the conversation with. You meet somebody on the train and then you talk about movies. You meet somebody on the train reading a book, and then you can start a conversation about the book he or she is reading. So books and movies, in my experience, are two very strong conversation starters. And especially because students can easily relate. Yeah. So you start talking about movies, and then most of them will say, hey, I know that movie. Hey, I know the character from the movie. I think in a way we can say that these two media are very resourceful type of resource that we can use to start a conversation. Now, and then for that reason, we had a book or / movie club last year. Also, to answer why discussion, this is a report by or a peta jalan pendidikan Indonesia. So this is the journey, the map journey of Indonesian education from 2020 until 2035. In one of the slides, they reported the lack of the interactions between teachers and students. Yeah. So this study or this slide specifically actually quoted Hybert et al. And his colleagues, who published a book about the reports of the teaching practices in some countries who join teams. Yeah, TIMMS is the test for the mathematics competency international, and then they studied the videos, and they found that our teacher produced less words than a lot of teachers around the world when they are interacting with their students, comparing to the other teachers in the world. Yeah. And then number two, our students produce less words compared to the other students around the world. So in average, in one session, in one 50-minute session, our students are only producing 94 words compared to 640 until 1,000 something words produced by other students from different countries. Yeah. So in one session. So in average, our students are only producing 194 words, talking time. Okay. And then number 3, when it comes to the exchange between teachers and students, yeah, Indonesian teachers and students, our teachers produce 28 words in comparison only one word produced by our students. So as you can see, this is a major concern, especially because we want to emphasize, especially if we want to improve students' participations and involvement in the learning process. How would we then improve our interactions if we dominate the conversation as teachers? If we say less words in the interaction, we just assign them with things to do, or if our students are not having the opportunities to actually express their opinions. So this is why discussion is important to be integrated in the classroom. And we offer books and movies as 2 media, yeah, that are resourceful enough to actually start the conversation, or to, and then finishing off with better comprehensions of the book and the story of the movies. Okay, now, again, this is based on the study that we did last year, but the analysis is not final. So this is what I'm going to share with you is like a preliminary report of our data analysis. So we had this book/movie club last year from September until December 2020. And then there were like 150 to 25 high school students joining our 13-week sessions, in which it was facilitated by lecturers who have had at least 10 years of teaching experience at the higher education level. But we were also helped by some wonderful students who then participated in guiding the discussions. Okay, and these were the books and the movies being introduced by the participants, by the lecturers that we observed. Some of you, or most of you, are probably familiar with these novels and the books and the movies being introduced. So if you notice, the movies of the movies that I'm showing you now are having their book versions. So teachers or facilitators in this case can always relate or move from books to movies and movies to books in their interaction and discussion. Okay, so now there were a lot of questions that we were trying to ask as we were sitting there observing the facilitators' interactions with the students, with the high school students. One of the questions that I would like to share today is, how do the facilitators engage students in the discussion? How do they do that? We want to know, and we want to learn from them. So that's why we were there observing, sitting during their moments of interactions. Now, the challenge for us was most students, or most high school students, had no camera on. So we were really struggling trying to get their reactions. So, to then anticipate that, then our strategies were, in analyzing, we recorded their instant reactions, animated reactions, interaction chat, or live audio video responses. So for example, when one teacher or one facilitator says something or asks a questions, we identify the kind of instant reactions that they were giving to the teacher or lecturer or facilitator for this matter. And then we acknowledge that as an engaged response. But then there were also responses that the facilitators, that were initiated by facilitators, thanks to the question that they produce. For example, the facilitator felt everything so quiet, and then he just asked someone, even though he was turning his camera off, to answer his questions. So we acknowledge that, and then we coded the kind of responses showed by the students based on these 2 types of responses, in addition to the no responses from the students. Okay, and then we studied this, and then we identified them, and then we identified the patterns and the types of interactions and responses that the students were giving. And then we came up with this, at least preliminarily come up with this. So we identified the model, the models of the interaction as a whole. Yeah, so instructionally, we were using these frames. Yeah, so because it was 13 weeks, so students, I happened to be doing it on the first week, in which I did the introduction. Students had to read or watch the movie before. So on the first week, I told the students that these are the list of the movies and the books that we would read. So when we met on the second week, the students were expected to have been reading the book. And then we shifted from main room to the breakout room. Yeah, so facilitators spent some time there and then moved to the breakout room. And then we use, many of the facilitators use these stances, from affective to afferent stances, from involving students' emotions to students' way of thinking in responses to the questions. Now, these are the models, yeah, facilitators model and scaffolded the interactions, and then students' response and critically and reflectively about the text, and then teachers were using discourse tools. Yeah, I'm going to share with you the discourse tools after this. And then the question is, and we have not finalized this, have we really, yeah, as facilitator, supported students' high-level comprehension? So yeah, I'm sorry that I cannot share with you the result of this research yet, because it's still being processed. Now, after the model, then we managed to identify how they, or what activities that these facilitators did to engage the participants. First, they were all prepared. Yeah, so we informed them about the students. They knew that the students were high schoolers. They knew that there will be big group of students, and they were prepared a lot, with their books and the movies. So the movies and the books were their own choices. So they knew the book very well. They modeled the reading. Yeah. So one of the facilitators were just practically reading the book together with the students. But to my surprise, yeah, such method engaged the students a lot. I will share with you how this facilitator engaged the students. And then number 3, they integrated technology as supporting tools in the process. Many of those facilitators were using quizzes and interactive activities like perhaps Mentimeter and Kahoot. Yeah, many of them use it. So I think it's one way to engage them in the process. Now, one thing that I'm going to emphasize in today's sharing is number 4. They let the students explore the talk or thinking together about the story. Yeah, so this is actually a concept introduced by Mercer when he introduced exploratory talk. Yeah, so for this kind of talk, yeah, we identified that the students were listening actively, asking questions, share relevant information, and doing other things like challenging ideas, provide reasons. Yeah, so basically the idea is for the students to try to create meaning or to try to create understanding together. So this is what we observe our facilitators were doing at some stage. I'm not saying that all the 13 facilitators were doing this successfully. So I'm saying that we managed to identify the kind of patterns that the teachers or the facilitators were performing, yeah, when they did this. Okay, so that's what they did, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, Bapak Ibu. So at least 4 things that we identify, but there are things about about what they said. Yeah, it was what they did. Now it's what they said. Yeah, so what they say, Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, matters a lot in our finding. Yeah, first of all, what did they do? Yeah, so we found that they identified students' name, and then shape their identities as critical readers and movie watchers. Yeah, so they identify the students as being high schoolers who are, for example, critical readers by positioning them as ones. Okay, and then many of them produce discourses or words or phrases like, "Hey, me too. Yeah, I like that too." Yeah, so this kind of interaction we found create engagement and connection. Yeah, so a lot of options. Yeah, Bapak Ibu, I just put the me too there to represent other expressions. And then a lot of these facilitators also use these effective response questions. Yeah, something like, how did you feel about the event in the story? Yeah, how would you feel if you were this character in the story? Yeah, so this is what what many facilitators produce during the interactions. And not less importantly is also they ask authentic questions. So they were not actually staging it, they were they were asking something in response to what the students were saying. Hey, why did you say the character was delusional, perhaps? Yeah, can you explore that a little bit? So there is this genuine interest in student response. Yeah, and then also many of these facilitators also build on students' contribution as community. Yeah, so in response to what the students were saying, the facilitators try to keep the channels open by saying, hey, did everyone hear that? Did everyone hear what Maria said? Can you repeat that, please, Jason? Yeah, who wants to add and what Jason has said earlier? Yeah, things like that. So try to make connections. But in short, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak dan Ibu, so what we notice from this interaction is there is this efforts of our facilitators to build rapport as well as getting students to think, right? So when you see like the uptake column over there on the left, yeah, when somebody said that's an important point, when the facilitator said that's an important point, that marks the idea of what this that marks or signals the students or the teachers' response to what the students were saying. Yeah, so a lot of these were happening in the process or the interactions. Yeah, okay. And then one thing that I would like to emphasize as well happened during the interaction is these facilitators seem to be able to make connection. Yeah, make connections with first when they invited students to ask questions. Have you had similar experience with Harry Potter, for example? This teacher asked, or this facilitator asked. Yeah, so he was leading the students to make connection between himself with the text, and also self to the word. Yeah, he asked some students, how would you relate this to the current event in the world? Yeah, how would you relate if you are reading love in the times of love in time of corona, yeah, with times love in the time of pandemic, perhaps, how would you relate this, yeah, with the current event in the world? Yeah, and then self to other texts, perhaps, what does this story remind you of other books? So these strategies, yeah, that were used by the facilitators really force the students to think about their learning. Yeah, so again, we saw this as a process of rapport building and continuous efforts of the facilitators to get students to think. Yeah, okay, so then those were two main ideas that we gathered from the results of our observation. Now, this comes to our personal reflection of our interaction. Yeah, so currently, as soon as the pandemic hit, like last year, 2020, we found that there is this campaign about focusing on Maslow before Bloom. Yeah, in a way that students must Maslow before they can bloom. So if you are familiar with the theory of hierarchy needs by Maslow, and then the theory of higher order thinking by Bloom on the right. So really, ladies and gentlemen, this research brought us to a reflection, and then we kind of agree with the with emphasizing students welfare or emotional welfare first before we eventually try to have them or to make them think about the lessons, about the subjects that they are studying. So so this is to emphasize that humanizing online interaction is about, for us, yeah, balancing. I hope that you Bapak Ibu agree with us as well, is that it's about balancing between relationship building, rapport building between you and the students, and learning. Yeah, this is to create students to think. Also, we in our reflections, we believe that our teaching and learning ideals influence the ways we teach and talk. Yeah, our perceptions, our beliefs will influence the way we talk in the classes as well. The thing is, having them online should not change those. Yeah, just because we then shift from offline settings, then we shift to online setting, it shouldn't change for what we believe about teaching. Thank you very much. That will be all from me, Bu Maria.
Okay, thank you very much, Pa Irfan. This is actually opening remark and also sharing at the same time. So, so basically, yeah, I do agree that our ideals or beliefs somehow it's reflected in our classroom. Although we thought it's just online, they see only like half of us, right? But the way we smile, the way we use our hands, our gestures, the way we choose our words, somehow it captures how we believe on the ideals of teaching and learning in our classroom. So one example for our discussions, when you can try this maybe if you turn off the camera, all of them they will also turn off the camera. But when we open the camera and we start calling their names one by one, they will start open up about themselves. So I like the word balancing here, right? Balancing and building rapport, building the relationship with students as part of your conclusions. So if I can say, your sharing basically underlines our discussion today. This is a great opening, and thank you for sharing this. Even when it comes to reading and
Mm,
our target at that time, I was also part of the virtual reading activities. I remember our target at that time is higher level of reading comprehension. uh, the thought at that time, how was it possible for us to achieve
mm,
this? But in the end, uh, engaging with the high school students, and then although they don't open up the camera, but when it comes to question and answer and discussion, they are actually engaged, surprisingly.
yeah.
So for this first sessions, this is a great underline, and it is a great bridge towards our next topic. And as a second speaker, Bu Finita is going to highlight the meaning of humanizing and what does it mean by dehumanize online learning. Whether we are actually the one who well, we might be the one contributing to dehumanizing online learning at one point. And the question, the biggest questions, right, Bu Finita and Pa Irfan, Pa Willy as well, perhaps. Uh, are we, I mean, all of this process, are this on our shoulders, or should we share the responsibility to the students as well? So basically, Bu Finita, as our second speaker, will deliver the comprehensive preview on this. And if I can introduce Bu Finita Dewi, Dr. Finita Dewi, she is an English lecturer at Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, Purwakarta. And you're right now at Bandung, right? And which is right. And she is also the director of Teacher Professional Development in Indonesia Technology Enhanced Language Learning Associations. Uh, Beside having extended experience in EFL teaching and training for more than 20 years, she has a great passion and interest in the area of educational technology. So I believe technology, enhanced learning, and also what's so called as like the involvement of technology in classroom, that's totally your expertise. So together with her team, she plans, designs, and develops e-learning materials and also organizes some technology-based or technology-focused teacher professional development program for the teachers across Indonesia. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Ibu Finita to share the next topic.
Thank you, Ibu Maria, for the kind introduction. And good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to thank the committee for inviting me to this great event. I know that BINUS is pretty well known with the online learning at the moment. And then this is such a great opportunity for me to finally get a virtual reunion with Pak Irfan, my colleague. We worked together like how many years ago, a long time ago, in some teachers training. And also finally I can be in sharing the stage with Pak Willy, my idol. Yay. So my presentation will be about building human connection in online learning. Pak Irfan previously mentioned that we need to balance the rapport between building the communication between students and teacher, students and students too. So at my initial conversation with Pak Irfan, when he mentioned that the topic of this webinar will be about humanizing online learning, I was thinking, I think I can do a kind of crowdsourcing in Facebook, asking some netizen in social media, what do you think about what do they think about humanizing online learning? Why does it matter? Has technology the humanized learning process? Is the teacher being replaced by a robot, by technology? So I was kind of curious about what people think about this topic. And here are some of the answer. I'm just going to show you some. Uh, One person mentioned that I think teacher, maybe she herself, gives too many rules and students get so many restriction. Another person say this one is from BINUS. She mentioned that teacher provided too many learning resources and the students was kind of overwhelmed with the resources given by the teacher. Now I would like to invite you, Bapak Ibu, to give your guess. What do you think the other people answer to the question about why do we need to talk about humanizing online learning? Why does it matter? Is there a problem in our class which they humanize the learning process? Can you share your answer in the chat box? Just drop one line, two lines in the chat box. I'll be waiting. Is it happening in your class that you think your class is not human, or you think everything's fine? We don't need to humanize the online learning. Let's see if any one of you can drop a line in the chat box. Balancing assignment. Thank you, Pa Andreas. So we need to balance the assignment. All right, teachers do not really know their students. Yeah, some of them are new students that we haven't met before. I miss seeing my students' smiles. Oh, you need to turn on your camera, Bu Eka. Too many assignments. Teacher are fighting for the amount of assignment, the assignment that you give yourself. Thank you, Pak Clemens. Still waiting for some other responses. Putri mentioned lack of interactions. Students become passive, and studying online makes students feel lonely, losing the opportunity to socialize. Yeah. So you are mentioning some human touch that our students need, and even the teachers need, right? Some of you miss the students. You need to meet your colleagues too. So we are experiencing silence all along the activities. All right, but thanks for being so active in the chat box. It means that we've been building rapport, just like Pak Irfan mentioned. Thank you for the contribution. I would like to move on. If you still want to move on with the chat, go ahead. So today what I'm going to talk about is the first one. I'm going to talk about the online learning in different contexts, and then I will highlight some learning spaces that we can provide for our students. And if we still have time, I'm going to share a bit of story from my class. So I'd like to start my presentation with an anecdote. This is a story of Farid. He is a patent manager at an intellectual company. So he's not a student. But in each year, he must enroll in at least one online course because it's written on his job description. So what he did when he followed an online course, he usually did it after working hours or sometimes during the working hours when he had time. And he followed intuitively the playlist of activity. It is self-paced, given by the instructors. Usually it consists of video, and then he has to join the kind of discussion forum and do assignment or given some cases by the tutor and do some assignment. You also have to read some articles. When he has problems, He doesn't turn to the tutor. He usually asks his colleague because all the assignments are very much related to his job. And he is eager to complete the assignment because it will influence his key performance indicators and also for his annual appraisal. So that's Farid doing an online course as a worker in industry. And the second anecdote is Johnny. Johnny is a university student. Probably he is one of our students. And he is in the third semester. He enrolled in one semester, he enrolled in 7 to 9 courses. You can imagine compared to Farid. And then he also needs some activities in campus organization. He become parts of the students' body. He also joined his lecture research project involved in social activities outside campus. He also still needs some kind of other activity like hanging out with friends, doing online games, playing with social media, watching Netflix, and many more. So now you have two cases, Farid's cases and Johnny's cases. Let's continue. I want you to think of the kind of courses, online courses that Farid and Johnny should have. Do you think it is okay to have similar types of online learning, the intuitive one, the self-paced, the one with video and an assignment, articles and then quizzes, things like that? Do you think Farid and Johnny should get similar online learning design? Yes or no? Why or why not? Please write in a chat box. Is it possible for Johnny to have similar design, which was given to Farid, given different context, different situation that they have? Anyone would like to share your opinion in the chat box? Oh, Yesi. No, the design should match the student's characteristics and needs. Thank you, Yesi, for starting the discussion. Ibu Nina say no, Bu Eka say no. What about the others? Ideally, no. Sounds like there is another thing in reality. Based on the description, it should be different. Thank you. No for Bunia, they should be differentiated according to the student's needs. Okay. I'm still expecting some more answer, probably some reason. I believe no. Thank you, Pa Andreas. Since they seem to be different, they should be different design. Thank you. All right, then. Why do I raise this issue? Because, okay, let's see. Clement say, but it's unrealistic when it comes to teach 100 plus students. Yes. So I'm raising this issue because most of us, when we teach online, we are dealing with a digital platform. Probably many of you are using Zoom, shifting your face-to-face class into screen, but some others start to use learning management system like Moodle or Google Class. And we know that Moodle, Google Classroom, which actually has similar logic to Moodle, were actually developed and built for the purpose of students like Farid in industrial curriculum. So we need to be aware that teachers shouldn't be constrained or framed by the structure of online learning, which are intuitive, and then teachers shouldn't provide a kind of playlist of activity for your students to be followed self-pacedly, because students need more than that. Our students in the university, at schools, need more than that. They need more interaction. If we look at online interaction, I believe you've seen this kind of explanation in many webinars. In Farid's context, most of the interaction are here in the students and materials. Even though the teacher exists, he or she exists in the form of voice or recorded video. So mostly the interaction is in students and materials. Meanwhile, our students need this student-teacher interaction and also need this student-student interaction. So I came across an article written by Thornberg mentioning that we can provide a kind of learning space in online learning. We need to be aware that there are different kinds of learning space in online learning. He makes an analogy that one can be in the form of campfire. You can imagine campfire, everyone's get together around the fire, and then somebody usually lit. So uh, everyone in the class get together in the campfire. But then there is a watering hole. If you look at the picture in the watering hole, you can see there are some small group uh, gathering. So they are not staying in the whole group, but they are discussing things in a small group. But then our students also need a cave where in which they need to be alone. They need to reflect on things, learn something without the disturbance of others. Sorry, somebody say, is there supposed to be some slide showing? Since Bu Finita said this and this pointing to something. Um, can you see
Uh,
my slide, Bu Maria?
so the slide is on already on my screen.
Oh, all right.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So it's doing fine.
All right. Thanks. So I was a bit concerned about that. All right, then. Hopefully, Bunina still can see the campfire slide uh, on the screen. All right, then. A bit about campfire. I mentioned that you can imagine a campfire, right? So there will be one person, usually the teacher. She will be leading the conversation, asking questions, probably prompting some questions, but the interaction still there. Then my personal interpretation of the campfire is like this. I break it down into clearer things, hopefully. So in a campfire, usually in the form of a synchronous interactive lecture, just like what is happening right now using Zoom. But then in some cases, Zoom is not an option because of the high bandwidth and so on. So we can resort to asynchronous recorded lecture. And then the activity is teacher-led. You can see that my talking time is much more than your text on the chat. And then we can use this for introduction to the topic or explanation on the content. And it's usually more formal. Um, in terms of technology, many of us use Zoom, but some starting to use some kind of messenger like WhatsApp and um, Telegram. And if you're using a recorded lecture, you can use YouTube and then post it in the LMS where the discussion can go on. And also you can use a Fokeru to record your voice. You can just uh, search and Google Fokeru, and then you can find an online recording tools which is easy for you to record your lecture and share it to your student. So that's campfire. The next one will be this is the drawback of campfire. This is what happened to what Pa Irfan mentioned at the beginning. Many of us got problem with camera. So, or got problem with when we ask any questions and silence. Nobody say anything. So we say, okay, then moving on. That's another problem in campfire. So then usually we also have a kind of activity in a watering hole. So in a watering hole, maybe you can see the last sentences here. It was peer teaching, a sharing of the rumor, news, gossip, dreams, and discoveries that drive us forward. So here I think students can work in group. Sometimes they talk about the assignments, but sometimes they have some kind of side talk, which is okay, and that's human, right? This is my interpretation of watering hole. We can have a kind of discussion board, whether it is chat like this, what I have in the chat room, or we can also have an oral discussion forum. I usually use voice thread for oral discussion forum. Um, this can be conducted in asynchronous mode, and then we can have our students to think before they speak, and then they can record, listen to it before they post it in voice thread. So it's more face saving, it's more friendly, it's less risky than when we talk directly in Zoom. And another thing that we can also have a pair or small group synchronous chat with or without the teachers present. Sometimes when teacher exists there, it's good because students can ask questions, but sometimes they kind of feel reluctant to talk, things like that. So it's less relaxed, probably, not all. And in the watering hole, it is more student centered and informal. And the last one, I believe, to be more human, students also need sometimes to be alone. Personal learning, they can isolate themselves, read or watch video or think about or reflect on things that they read and they watch. So they need to be in a cave. And these are some of my personal interpretation of being in a cave. You can ask your students to have a reflection, whether it is oral or written. You can use Padlet or Flipgrid for doing this. Flipgrid is for oral reflection. We know that many of our students get video assignment lately, and sometimes they have to spend more time on editing video rather than speaking on the video. So when you use Flipgrid, you can reduce that technical problems. They don't need to edit anything. They just need to speak, reflect, or do the assignment orally. You can also ask for students to do journaling and individual reading, viewing, listening activities. You can give tasks, essay writings, things like that. That can be done in the cave. So those are the three things that we can do in the online learning, and we need to be aware of balancing, not really balancing, but putting effort to provide the campfire, the cave, and also the watering hole. Now, hopefully I still have time. I would like to invite you to join me. I'll put the link on the chat. Sorry. Here. Okay, hopefully you get the link. And what I want you to do is, there. What I want you to do is just give mark on the space that so far you have been using. I believe it's just a matter of terminologies or analogy, but I think you have been using this kind of space in your online learning. Which one is more dominant, or which one have you been using? Is it campfire? Is it cave? Is it watering hole? You can put marks in 3 of the pictures. Actually, we have 4 participants here. Many of you mentioned campfire. 2 of you mentioned campfire. Okay, campfire still leading. And here comes watering hole, campfire. We'll wait for another 1 minute. Okay. You don't need to create an account, I guess, Pa Andreas. I think everybody's here doesn't need account. But if you got difficulties, you can also respond on the chat, whether it is campfire, watering hole, or the cave that you mostly use in your online learning. So far, campfire seems to be leading. So many of you use this kind of interaction. watering hole is the second, and cave is the third. Somebody put uh, somewhere in the middle, so probably you have another space. Okay. Actually, I have another question, but I don't think that we will have enough time for that. So thank you, Pandreas, for the response. Okay, so campfire. Most of you are in campfire, but some uh, are in watering hole. Not too many are in the cave. Well, probably later you can start to think of how do I provide a watering hole for my students, and how do I provide cave for my students. Now, I would like to share what I did with my students regarding this three learning space. For your information, I'm teaching not in English department. I'm teaching in early childhood education department. So I teach general English. My students' proficiency level is from elementary to low intermediate. So their proficiency are not really high. I usually use some simple activities with my students. This is one of the activity that I did, implementing this different kind of learning space. So at the beginning, I did the kind of campfire activity. I don't use Zoom because some of my students living in a place where internet is not really strong. So once I used Zoom and they were just going back and forth, back and forth, I was tired of admitting them into Zoom. So I decided not to use Zoom. I use Telegram. In the beginning, in the campfire, it's a synchronous activity. I start to talk about the topic. The topic was this: digitally unplugged. So I asked my students what they know about digital unplugged, and then do you think they have experienced being digitally unplugged, and so on and so forth. The discussion was pretty good. um, they respond, and the response is like uh, this in the Telegram. I'll get back to that later. And then after that, I asked them to go to their cave, listen to one listening passage from Elo. The topic is about dialed versus unplugged. It's a conversation between two person asking about what do you think about digitally unplugged? If they if they left the phone at home, what would happen? How would you feel, and so on and so forth. It's quite interesting conversation. After they listen and they also do the exercise in Elo, we get back to campfire and I ask them the comment whether or not the listening whether the listening is too easy or too difficult or just right for them. And then they ask some questions about um, unfamiliar vocabularies, things like that. So we discuss the topic and also the language. And after that, I put them in a watering hole. They have the model of conversation here in Elo, and I asked them to make a video call with their friends talking about being digitally unplugged. They can use the conversation in Elo as the model. So they create a kind of video call and record it, or some of them use Zoom. Those who have better internet connection, they use Zoom. And after that, we share the result here and reflect on the process of working on the video. So let me walk you through the discussion. This is the campfire. This is the discussion. I was there, responding to my students, giving comment about the content, and some of them ask question like, this is the first time I know the word cold turkey, and then one other mentioned that I think the meaning of cold turkey is like this. So the conversation went on. And in watering hole, this is the result of the discussion. Let's see if I can play this.
I want to hear your opinion about digital unplugged. Okay, so I think digital unplug is doing something activities without using any.
Well, it's not really natural. I believe that they prepare it before they speak, they record, but it's not really. They don't really read the text, so it's pretty okay, I think, for their level of proficiency. And um, let me share a little bit about the not the untold story, but it's not that smooth actually. What happened in the class? I'm teaching 3 parallel classes. So in some classes, the discussion in campfire was okay, was great. They start to uh, uh, guess what it means by digitally unplug and so on. But some other just Google the meaning of digital unplug and paste it on the Telegram. So it's not always that smooth. And also here, while doing the video call, if you see these 3 examples later, when you access my Canva, you can access the video too. They are great. They are the exemplary. But then another students only read the text, because in LO, beside listening, you can also read the script. Some students just reading the script without. I think they don't even know the meaning of the script. And some others got problems with internet. So this is what they did. But I think this is pretty creative.
Hi, Shima. Hello, Sylvie. How are you? I'm fine.
So they do a voice note, exchange voice note on WhatsApp, and they record it. The conversation was okay. You can listen to it. Not really natural, but okay. And they also find out how to solve the problem, because they cannot do a video call, they cannot do a Zoom meeting and record it. So they do this. Oh well, I think beside what is it, looking at the product, the final product of the recording, there is something, the untold story that I don't know behind creating this. They have to get together with their friends virtually, talking about how to solve these problems, and then probably they um, think of the solution and so on. So the watering hole, I think the watering hole works pretty well in this activity. So my reflection for the activity on regarding the digitally unplugged that I shared before is that to humanize my online class, I should be present. Students should know that I'm there, even though it is an asynchronous activity. So the class lasts for a day, not only for an hour. I should be there in Telegram answering some questions, helping students when they have problems, and so on and so forth. And then another thing is that being present also show that we care about their problems, show that I know you have problems with internet connection, you can find another solution to the task that I give. Another thing is that being flexible in terms of due date, time. If I say that please submit the result by the end of the day, but then some of them got problems, technical problems, things like that, they can submit it the next day. The output, if I ask them to create video and they can only create a voice note, they can only create audio file. That should be okay too. And also the type of task, I should be able to make a kind of differentiation, kind of variation regarding to the task that my student need to create. And the last one is I need to be aware of the students learning space, the 3 things that I mentioned before. Probably I spend too much time in campfire, then I need to think of, oh, my students need to go to the cave, and my students need a watering hole to work with their friend. So that's my reflection, and also probably my suggestion to you regarding the topic. Well, that's all my presentation. And if you want to access my slide, you can go to the link provided there. I will copy paste it on the chat. I'll give it back to you, Bu Maria.
Right. Thank you very much, Bu Finita. It's very practical sharing. You give us a lot of like best practices already, and it's really interesting to know that there are three types of delivering material in a classroom. We can do campfire, we can do cave, we can do watering hole, we can combine them in certain proportions so the engagement will be there. But actually, when I go through your PowerPoint, I'm so interested with being present, which is sometimes it's hard to do because with this kind of online here and there, we juggle with different different channels, and also perhaps it's the same thing with the students as well. And being flexible with the due date. That point, if I can mention my own reflection, sometimes we feel insecure if we extend the due date. We feel like we don't teach if we don't have strict due date and don't give them a lot of assignments. So basically, the takeaways I can point out here. First, the three way of delivering materials: campfire, cave, watering hole, and also as a facilitator in online classroom, we gotta be present. We have to be flexible, and we have to be aware with the students' learning space. So, with your elaborations here, maybe it will let a lot of questions on among the participants. But if I can highlight one more time, for the participants, if you wish to ask questions, you can start posting it right now in the chat room. And then later on, one of our colleagues, Miss Ayu, will be the one helping us to filter the questions, to compose and to compile all of the questions. And in the end of everybody's sessions, all of the three speaker sessions will start the question and answer. And we wish that you will stay until the end of the webinars. All right, so thank you very much, Bu Finita, for the best practices. And now moving to our next topic. Basically, the questions on how is it possible to humanize online learning and what are the best practices have been there. But I believe our next speaker will also deliver more pedagogical preview on online learning. So I'd like to welcome Pak Willy Renandya right here. So Pak Willy is already on the spotlight. So, basically, well, everybody here knows Pak Willy very well. So he currently teach applied linguistic courses, right, Pak Willy? And the courses at National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. And he's a frequent plenary speaker at ALT conferences. And of course, he has published extensively in the area of second language education. I guess your recent publication is with Richard Day. It's on the primacy of extensive reading and listening. And you have very popular teacher professional development account in Facebook. We know it as Teacher Voices. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Pak Willy Renandya. The floor is yours, Pak Willy. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Okay, Pak Willy, I guess the microphone is open right now.
Yes, it's on now. Yes. My share screen also enabled?
Yes, it's open, I believe.
No, it's not. It's not enabled yet.
Okay, now it's open.
Okay, let me see. Yes, it is. Yes. Yes, before I start, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Pak Irfan, thank you very much for having me. Ibu Maria, Finita, Dewi, it's really a pleasure to be with you on stage eventually. Let me just ask everyone to turn on their video and their audio very, very briefly. I just want to say hello to you. I just want to make sure that you are there with me. There you go. You look very nice.
Halo, Pak.
Hello, Pak
There
Willy.
you go.
Nice
Yes.
to get to see you here.
Yes, remember Pak Irfan was complaining about not being able to see people on the screen when he is teaching. Now I can see you very clearly. How are things with you?
Great.
Are you happy teaching online? Or do you miss meeting your students in the classroom?
Yes, of course.
It's energy draining, Pak Willy.
Okay, let me just get myself organized. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of my presentation is a little bit broader. I'm sorry, somebody is trying to call me. Just give me 1 second. Yes, okay. The topic that I'm addressing is a little bit broader. It's humanizing learning, both online and also on-site learning, using a special kind of pedagogy that you are very familiar with, student-centered pedagogy. But before that, let me just introduce again briefly my university. It's Nanyang Technological University. Is located in Singapore. It's one of the good universities in the world. In Asia, it's number 5. In the world, maybe it's in the top 20 or so. And I belong to the School of Education. And the name of that School of Education, locally, it's called the National Institute of Education. It's it's the best teacher education institution in Singapore. The reason being, this is the only teacher education institution in Singapore, which means that if you want to become a teacher in Singapore, you have to study with us. This is the only place where you can study to become a teacher, and later you may be posted at the local or government schools in Singapore. We've got a range of graduate programs, Masters in Applied Linguistics, M.Ed in English, and also a range of doctoral programs. Right now, for example, I have a number of students from Indonesia studying with me and with NIE, making use of the National Indonesian Scholarship Program, LPDP. Okay, now back to the main question. Maria, please stay with me. Yeah? Have your microphone on as well. Humanizing language learning, or humanizing learning in general. Usually what comes to mind when you teach language or when you teach any other subject matter? Foremost in your mind is how I can help my students build their knowledge of the field, build their disciplinary knowledge. If you're a language teacher, then the main thing that you have your attention focused on is, what are the linguistic needs of my students? How can I help my students develop their English language competence or English language proficiency? But that is only one need. Yes, that is probably a very important need. And that's probably the reason why the students come to you to study English or any other languages. But if we want to really, truly humanize learning, then we need to address the students' many other needs. And what are these needs? There you go. We need to address the affective needs of our students, their feeling. We need to address their emotional needs as well during the learning process. And one big issue about this is motivation. And many of our students do not have a lot of motivation when they learn in the classroom or when they learn online. Another important consideration is their thinking needs, their cognitive needs, and then their kinesthetic needs as well. You know, the fact that students need to move about, that they need to use their hands probably, and to speak as well in response to your questions. And also finally, the social needs, the needs for interaction with other students in the classroom and outside the classroom. So unless we are able to address all of these needs, then our teaching may not be, fully humanizing, so to speak. Yeah. In other words, we need to consider our students' needs holistically, their subject matter needs, their emotional needs, their thinking needs, their kinesthetic needs, and also their social needs as well. The question then is this: how can we humanize, how can we address the students' needs? One thing that I want to share with you is this, that we can address students' needs by making use, by adopting a teaching approach, which is known as a student-centered approach to teaching or to learning. So my outline today, there's only 3 things that I want to discuss with you, to share with you. Number 1 is, what is this thing called SCL, student-centered learning? And number 2, how is this SCL connected to motivation? How important is motivation in the big discussion, in the whole big scheme of, reaching out to every single student in the classroom? And then finally, I'm going to share with you 6 big ideas that teachers can make use of when they try to engage the students, when they try to motivate the students in the learning process, whether they are learning in the classroom or outside the classroom. I'm going to show you 3 images now. Maria, 3 images. Do you think all 3 images represent what we know, what we believe to be a student-centered approach to learning? This is image number 1. This is image number 2. And this is image number 3. One more time. This is image number 1. This is image number 2. And this one is image number 3. Which one do you think is closest to our understanding of what student-centered pedagogy is all about? Number 1, number 2, or number 3? Yes, choose one. 1, 2, 3.
Number 3.
Number 3, yes. Number 3 is more likely to be more student-centered. If you look at number 2, this is a very typical things that normally happen in a big lecture theater. One person talking, the rest of the people are just listening. Listening is not a bad thing, yeah? Listening can be a good thing. But I think if we want to engage our students more fully, if we want to address the needs of our students more fully, then I think we need to do more. We need to change the way we teach, and we need to address the various needs of our students. This one looks very nice, actually. Look at the teacher. She looks very confident. She looks very happy, but the students are just there listening. Yeah, again, listening is not a bad thing, but I think we need to do more in order to engage our students. So what is SCL actually, student-centered learning? I'm not going to give you a long definition of SCL. SCL simply means this. SCL simply means it's the kind of teaching that focuses less on us, the teacher. Yes, the teacher is still important, but our focus should be more on the students. So less us and more students, and more on the students. It is an approach to teaching that places more importance on what students feel, think, and do than what the teacher does. Yeah, one more time. It's an approach that places more importance on what students feel, think, and do. What do we mean by feel, think, or do? This is what I mean. The feeling is the affective dimension, affective needs of the students. I think it's human nature that students need to feel curious. Otherwise, if they're not curious, if they're not excited, if they're not feeling happy in the classroom, I don't think they will want to spend 1 whole hour with you, whether it's online or on-site learning. Yeah, so the feeling is going to be very important, and I'm going to elaborate a bit more about this feeling thing a bit later. And number 2 is thinking. During the learning process, whether it's online or on-site, you need to make sure that your students are able to make all these wonderful connections about what they are learning, that they are able to make, this positive, processes of constructing meaning, of constructing understanding, or co-constructing understanding or knowledge with the teacher. Yeah. And in the process, they will also be able to create their own knowledge eventually. The doing things basically is, something that we are familiar with. Yeah. The students want to be able to share their thoughts, to discuss, to debate, and to do a little bit of writing maybe, and to do a little bit of reading, whether it's online or on site. So that is what SEL is all about, yeah? Focusing more on the teachers, more on the students than on the teachers. Okay, now let us spend just 1 or 2 minutes looking at some of the differences between teacher-centered learning and student-centered learning. This is basically some of the main differences. In a teacher-centered learning, the teachers spend a lot of time talking, and the teachers, as a process, as a result of talking, interacting with the students, they are engaged basically in a deeper level of processing. And the teachers very often get excited about delivering, about presenting, about teaching in the classroom. The students, on the other hand, may not be as engaged. They listen, and because of that, the kind of processing that they do tends to be a bit shallow. And very often, more often than not, the students feel a little bit bored. So this is basically some of the key differences between student-centered and teacher-centered approach. Again, my question to you, Maria, is this: who learn more? In a teacher-centered learning context, who learn more, the teachers or the students?
Should be the students.
No, actually, it's the teachers who get to learn more. Yes, because it's all about the teacher. The focus is on the teacher. Yeah. I'm sure you have seen this, that when you teach, actually you learn twice. What about the students? The students are there on the receiving end. Yes, they learn something, but they don't learn as much, basically. Yeah. Now, this is what happens when you teach. Even before you teach, you are engaged in a lot of these wonderful things. Now, these are the kind of things that we want our students to be able to be engaged in. But in a teacher-centered learning, this is what happens. The teachers are enjoying the benefits of doing a lot of thinking, deeper level of thinking and processing, reading, analyzing, reframing, synthesizing, categorizing, evaluating, and doing many of the things that are important in knowledge creation or knowledge construction. What about the students? In a teacher-centered learning situation, do the students get to do all these things? I think the answer is yes, a little bit, not much. Why is that? This is the reason. Yeah, they're too busy listening and taking notes. And because of that, they have been deprived of the opportunities to be engaged in all these wonderful things that they are supposed to be doing in the first place. Now, this is, so very briefly then, that is some of the major differences between teacher-centered approaches to language learning and student-centered approaches to language learning. Our attention should be on how we can make use of an approach that is more student-centered, and focusing in particular on how we can get every single student to be motivated and to be engaged in learning, to be fully engaged in learning. Why motivation? What's the big deal about motivation? Why is it so important in education? I think we know the answer. Motivation is about having this excitement, having this will, this desire, and more importantly, the thrill to learn. Yeah, that special feeling driven by curiosity, basically, that will drive students to spend a lot more time, sometimes on their own, in order to learn what they are expected to learn. The reason, I think we know that as well. When the will is not there, when the thrill is not there, then only a small amount of learning can happen in the classroom. In other words, SCL, again, student-centered learning, works best when students are truly, truly motivated. In a typical classroom, Maria, I hope the answer is 100% for you. How many of your students are motivated? 25, 50, 75, 100, or none of the above?
God knows, Pa. But I hope they have 100% motivated.
I like what you said. You hope. but you are never sure. I've been asking this question to many teachers that I have met in my career. And if you're lucky, then, 50%. But most of the teachers that I ask is probably about 25%. Now, interestingly, these 25% of the students who are motivated are the most successful in their learning. Yeah, the figure can be smaller than that, but let's be positive and say that 25% of your students are motivated. Our job then is to try the best we can to increase the number of students who feel motivated in our lesson. Maybe 50%, maybe 75%, 100% if that is possible at all. Yeah. So what can we do to motivate our students? Now, I am reminded of this very, very special quote, which I want to share with you this morning. Yeah. And we are going to read this together with me. The best way to motivate students
is to improve the quality of our teaching.
Yes. Okay. So the best way is to improve the quality of our teaching. It won't help you a lot if you just blame your students. Hey, students, you're not motivated. Doesn't help at all. Yeah. The best way, I like this very much because this rings true to me. If my students are not motivated, probably it's not their fault. It's probably the way I teach, maybe the way I relate to the students, maybe the materials that I use are not interesting. So it's about us making changes so that our teaching is seen as being something that is motivating for the students. Yeah. Okay. So the question then is, how do we improve the quality of our teaching? So that is what I want to share with you now. 6 ideas that I want to share with you. Yeah. There are 6 T's, all begin with T. Now, these are all the 6 T's that I want to share with you. Can you mention one of the T's, do you think, Maria? One of the T's? T. Any thoughts that comes to mind? By Irfan? T. Okay, let me help you. There you go. Yeah. So T, teaching method, the way you teach. T, the text, the teaching materials that you use. Number 4, the task and the kind of test that you employ, that you use with the students, and the kind of technology also. It's all begin with T. But what about T1? The T1 is right there in the middle. T1, what do you think that T1 is about? Maria? T1 is, yes, it's you. It's the teacher. Yeah, I place the teacher there. The teacher being the most important person in the equation. T number 1. T number 1. Okay, let's discuss T number 1. Yeah, I hope you can see the link here between motivation and the teacher. So what I'm suggesting here is the teacher is probably the most important person who can motivate, or the other way around, demotivate the students. Because of that, we need to ask this question. So what makes a good teacher? What makes the kind of teacher who can motivate our students? Is it our relationship with the students? Yes. Is it the knowledge? Do we have enough knowledge to inspire our students in the classroom? Delivery, the method of teaching, how you approach, how you reach out to your students in the classroom, and many other things. Yeah. Okay. I asked this question to a number of people, and this is what they told me. So coming up, number 1 is knowledge. If you feel that you have not been able to motivate your students, maybe, just maybe, your students may think that your knowledge about the subject matter is probably not up there yet. The students can tell whether you are somebody who is fully qualified, who is knowledgeable about the subject matter that you are teaching. Number 2 is delivery, the method of teaching, how you deliver your lesson, how you engage your students in the lesson. Number 3 is rapport, which is relationship. Yeah. And there are many other things that makes up, the quality of a good teacher. T number 2 is teaching method. I hope you will try to remember all the 6 T's, because I'm going to ask you at the end if you remember all the 6 T's. Yeah, T1 is the teacher, T2 is the teaching method. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many, many different ways of delivering our materials in the classroom. We can use the lecture style, which is very popular. It's not a bad thing, but if you do it all the time, every day, day in, day out, I think your students will get tired of you. Yeah, there are different ways: the inquiry-based, the flipped classroom, seminar style, and many other ways of, delivering our lessons in the classroom. What is important to remember is we should be using the kind of teaching methods that is teacher-fronted. Like lecture style, for example, is a teacher-fronted. Students get tired of listening to you after 15 or 20 minutes. It has to be more student-oriented. And the key thing to remember is we need to use a variety. So this week, maybe you want to use a lecture style, and next week you may want to use an inquiry-based or discovery learning style, or the next week is a debate in the classroom, or maybe a flipped classroom the following week. The key thing is variety. Another important thing, when you plan your lesson, make sure your lesson is presented, is organized in such a way that it has at least these 3 important features. Number 1, the key takeaway. What is the main objective, the main goal of your lesson? And make sure that you say this again and again during your lesson. For today's presentation, for my presentation today, this is something that I want you to remember, basically. Just 1 point, yeah? And that is to motivate students, improve our teaching using SEL. So remember that. That is the main takeaway of today's lesson. The structure will have to be very simple and transparent. So my presentation today, for example, is organized around these 3 ideas. What is SEL, and how is SEL related to motivation? And number 3, different ways of motivating our students. Number 3 is micro learning. Remember, especially when you do online teaching, make sure that every 10 minutes you stop and give students opportunity to reflect, to think back, to engage in a conversation, in a discussion, and things like that. So present your lesson in a bite-sized manner, small chunks, and then maybe after 10 or 15 minutes, have a short break for students to reflect on and to maybe to interact with other students in the classroom. That is T number 2. Maria, what was the T number 1 again? T number 1 is the teacher.
Teacher.
T number
and then
2
T number
is,
2 is the teaching method.
Look at that, Maria remembers. This is what student-centered learning is all about. Yes, T3 is the text. Ladies and gentlemen, the text is one of the most important components of your teaching. One thing that can motivate your students, but can also demotivate your students. So do make time, do make sure that you have prepared teaching materials, whether it's PowerPoint slides, whether it's reading materials, whether it's something else, digital text. Make sure that the text, the materials that you use for teaching is interesting. I was reminded of this quote: in the absence of interesting texts, very little is possible. Remember that. You may be the most wonderful teacher in the world. You may be the most motivating teacher in the world, but if the text, the teaching materials is not exciting, is not interesting, then it's really difficult to get your students to be excited about learning in your classroom, yeah? For language teaching purposes, the content of the text, of the reading passages, for example, will have to be so interesting, will have to be compelling. Compelling is the kind of text that will get students to stay on the text, feeling very excited, feeling, fully involved and engaged in their reading because it's so interesting and they want to get to the end of the reading materials. And number 2, also important, is the language of the text will have to be accessible. It has to be comprehensible. So it has to be just right. The content will just have to be just nice, and the language will just have to be just right, not too easy, not too difficult as well. Very often, we tend to use the kind of text that belong to the academic genre. Nothing wrong with that, but I think we all know that that kind of text, school texts, are not so interesting, are not so exciting. So we might also want to consider texts taken from the internet, from Edutopia, maybe from TED, text from the more popular genre, to get the students to be excited about the materials before you introduce the more challenging, the more dense academic genre. Now, here are some examples of the kind of text. Now, text here can be oral and can also be written. Yeah. If you are teaching science, for example, then you may want to use something like this from TED in order to get the students to be excited before you introduce the more challenging academic text. For civil engineering, for students, for example, here is another one for business students. Yeah. Psychology students, they can watch this video clip really, really well delivered by this professor from the USA. So very exciting and very motivating presentation. There's another one there. So what I'm trying to say here is that, yes, there are many different kinds of texts out there. It's your job to find the most interesting. Yes, eventually students need to read the kind of text that are, that will prepare them academically. But in order for you to get there, you may probably need to provide a bridge. And that bridge can come from, text from the more popular genre like the TED or other pieces of information available on the internet these days. Now, here are some of the benefits of digital text. They are shareable, they are more interactive, and they are more annotatable. I think Finita knows a lot about these things. Invite her again to talk about how students and teachers can make, optimal use of digital text these days. Okay, just very briefly, you don't have to answer this. Which of the first three T's do we need to, or do you need to improve on? Is it T number 1? Is it T number 2? Or is it T number 3? Or it's all three, all of them? Yeah, think about that as I continue to the next three. Remember, the first one is T1 is the teacher, T2 is the teaching method, and T3 is the text. T number 4. Yes, the first three T's are important, but T number 4 is no less important than the text that we just explored together. The task refers to what do you want the students to do following the reading materials, following the teaching materials that they have been exposed to. Now, the task will have to, again, for a student-centered kind of learning, the task will have to engage the students fully, emotionally, as well as cognitively. The first one is the task will have to be engaging. It's not too hard, not too easy, but it's something that gets them really, really excited about maybe solving a problem, a task that requires the student to solve a problem. And this kind of task will, demand that the students do a lot of wonderful things like explaining, exploring, elaborating, and eventually evaluating their own learning. So the 5 E's, engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. If you're able to do this, then your teaching is likely to be more interesting, to be more engaging, and it reflects what we know about the nature of student-centered learning. I'm going to give you an example now. Now, in this example, you will see how I make use of what I just discussed, the T1, T2, T3, T4, in a lesson that I did with my students. I don't teach language skills, but I teach applied linguistics. I teach language teaching methodology. Now, that's the name of the course, yeah? It's a course on language teaching methodology. My students are all graduate students, very experienced English language teachers from many different parts of the world, including Indonesia, Singapore, and China. So the course is about the theory and practice of language teaching. This is the design of my particular lesson that I want to discuss with you. Yeah, there's a before, there's a during, and there's an after. Before, during, and after. Before means before I meet my students in class. So there's a lot of things happening before I meet my students to deepen their understanding of the topic. And after the lesson is finished, there's still a lot of discussion going on after the lesson is completed. So this is the design of my course. There's an online task which I use using Wakelet. Wakelet is an online digital platform where you can put, a lot of information, content, YouTube video, reading materials, and the students can access and can also explore and discuss online. And then the during is me and the students spending time discussing, exploring the topic further. And after, the students will continue to work on a task using, again, a very simple online application called Google Doc. And finally, the students will have to work together and produce maybe a 5-page essay on, on the topic. And the topic happens to be principles for teaching vocabulary. So before, this is like 1 week before. 1 week before the face-to-face meeting that I have with my students, I sent this information to my students, and the students' job is to look at the reading materials and write responses like this. Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion going on even before the students come to class. Yeah, they can write their thoughts, they can share their ideas, they can add additional information from the internet like YouTube videos and other interesting and related materials before they come to class. And then during the F2F, face-to-face session, I engage the students in this 5E, exploring, explaining, and let me just 1 second here. Something is popping up on my screen. Okay. Yep. Exploring and then explaining and evaluating and elaborating as well. This is what I do during the face-to-face sessions. Yeah. I get the students to contribute 1 or 2 principles in Google Docs. Yeah. So they work together, using, a very simple application like Google Doc to share their thoughts and ideas. And because I have about 20 students and each student's contributed 1 or 2 principles for teaching vocabulary, then I ended up having like 40 principles. Am I happy with 40 principles? No, I'm not happy. 40 is just too many. So what I asked them to do then in the classroom is for the students to have a debate. An open debate on which principles that they have put on Google Docs should stay and which principles should go. So there's a lot of discussion going on there. Yeah, my job is very easy, is a mediator. So eventually I help the students decide, okay, these are the 10 principles that I think should stay. The other principles are good, interesting, but maybe, 10 is just enough for people to remember. And then after the lesson, this is what happens after the lesson. Yeah, we have the 10 list of principles. And then I selected about 5 editors from the students to put together their thoughts, to write, to compose the ideas in essay form. They also need to write an introduction and a conclusion. So what eventually they had is something like this. Yeah, a small booklet in an ebook format with all the ideas contributed by all 20 students, nicely written, and it's ready to go online. So eventually it's put on Facebook and also in my website, which can be accessed by anyone who is interested in finding out more about the principles for teaching vocabulary. Okay, now here is a little debrief. So I've just shared with you a sample lesson that, to me, in my opinion, is a student-centered, because it involves a lot of students discussing, being engaged in the lesson, and all that. So what are some of the theories behind this? I think you may have heard about these wonderful, wonderful theories, and let me just share with you some of this on the screen. Maya, did you see anything related to constructivism? It's a big theory in education. Is there anything going on? Yes, I think the answer is yes. There's a lot of construction going on. It's not just me telling the students, hey, these are 10 principles, remember those 10 principles. It's not like that. There's a lot of construction and co-construction or co-building, co-creation of understanding and knowledge going on. Tech-mediated learning, we are looking about online learning. Is there anything that is remotely connected to what we have referred to as technology-mediated learning? The answer is yes. I use very simple, applications to engage the students. Social cultural theory of learning. Yes, there's a lot of discussion going on, yeah? Self-determined learning. Now, this is another word for motivation. Are the students excited? I didn't ask them, actually, but from the work that they did, I could tell that they were really, really curious. They were really, really excited and motivated about finding out, what are some of the most important principles behind vocabulary learning. Engaged learning? I think so, yeah. I think everyone was very engaged. Everyone was contributing happily in the learning process. That's T number 4. It's a bit long, yeah? The task. Number 5 is the test. Now, this one is a little bit tricky. How can you make your test more interesting, more motivating? I think the past few years, we have seen a new way of assessment, a new way of assessing students. We are not only interested in assessing what the students have learned, but we are also interested in assessing the students as they make progress along the way. In other words, we are looking at the differences between assessment of learning and also assessment for learning. I think nowadays people are more interested in looking at the other one, assessment for learning, also known as continuous assessment, also known as ongoing assessment, also known as formative assessment. Now, these formative assessments tend to be small and more frequent. That's point number 1, yeah? Small and more frequent. And number 2, the type of assessment, the format of assessment is numerous, multiple ways of assessing students' understanding, students' knowledge, and students' skill. Now, here is an example from Google. Yeah, if you Google this, keywords there, you'll be able to find numerous ways of checking students' understanding of a reading passage that you introduce in class, for example. It's not just one way. Okay, here is the reading materials, and then here are 10 questions that you need to answer. That's just one type of checking or assessing students' understanding. There are many, many different ways. Now, here's another example. Yeah. So if we are open to making changes in the way we test, we assess our students, I think there are just many, many different ways out there that can help you understand, different ways of assessing your students' learning. More here. Again, it's very easy nowadays for us to learn and find out the many, many different ways of checking and assessing our students' learning. Yeah. Very interesting ways. I haven't tried all this, but these are potentially more interesting than the kind of test items that we usually use in our teaching. Finally, this is the last one, Maria, technology. Whether you teach online or whether you teach on-site, the future is going to be blended. Yeah, when COVID-19 is gone, when you return to the classroom, you will have to use technology. Technology is here, is going to stay with us for many, many years to come, and we need to make use of the affordances that technology provides us, to help our students learn much more. The question is this, whether or not technology will improve learning. That's a big question that people have been trying to answer. The answer is yes, if and only if we are not just thinking about technology itself, but we are also focusing on the pedagogy that comes with the technology that we are using in the classroom. So technology alone will not improve education, but if we focus more on the pedagogical aspect, then technology can be a very powerful tool for us. Again, in our case, it has to be a student-centered kind of pedagogy. Yeah. So my advice to you, use technology to enhance our pedagogy. Number 2, use easy to use tech tools, easy ones. I don't think we need to use complicated tech tools. Just simple, easy ones that don't take a lot of time for us to learn and don't take a lot of time for the students to learn. The next question is how many and which ones? Not too many. I've been asking this question to many people, including to Finita as well. Finita, I asked her one time, Finita, tell me 6 things that you must use when you teach with technology. And she gave me some examples. Here's another thought as well, 10 teacher picks for best tech tools. And you'll be surprised that these tech tools are easy to use and they're also free to use as well. Now, here are my favorite tech tools. They're there, they're available for free, and you can use it, to help your students learn in the classroom. Yeah. Peer Deck, Mentimeter, Wakelet, and Flipgrid. And what is this one? Let me just pull this up a little bit. This one is Edpuzzle. What is this one, the little bird there, Maria? Do you remember that symbol? This one?
It's Padlet, Pak.
Padlet.
Yes, Padlet.
It's similar
yes.
to Wakelet.
Yes, Padlet, yes. Yeah. So these are very easy tools to use that will help you support your teaching and will help your students support their learning. Okay, the last 3 T's again, task, test, and technology. Which one do you need to improve on? Maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe all 3 of them. Yeah, give it a think. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the 6 T's again. Remember, the 6 T's are not just about the 6 T's. The 6 T's are about motivation. Yeah. And these 6 T's can help you improve on the quality of your teaching. And in turn, you'll be able to engage your students. You'll be able to address the 5 or the 6 needs of your students. T1 is the teacher, Maya. T2 is the
teaching method.
Yes. T3 is a
it's
quiz
the
for you.
text.
The text, the teaching materials.
Teaching materials, and then T4 is the task.
The task, yes, and T5.
And T5 is the test.
Is the test, and finally T6 is.
We have technology.
Technology, yeah. All these 6 T's are likely to help you, develop the quality of your teaching. And if you're successful in doing that, then your students will be likely feel that they are with you in the learning process. And that is how we all can humanize our teaching, working and developing students' interest and desire to learn in the classroom. Finally, let me read this for you. The best way to humanize learning is to use student-centered pedagogies. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Maria, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Pa Willy. So that's actually the 3rd sessions, and I'd like to invite everybody to give a round applause for all of the 3 speakers. You can give virtual applause. And well, thank you very much, Pa Irfan, Bu Finita, Pa Willy, for all of the insights. It's really enriching. And basically the biggest takeaway from Pa Willy, it's going to be the student-centered learning. I can see that some questions flooding to my channel, and I get one, like, how many questions already? 5 questions already. So still, I'd like to invite everybody to post the questions, and then we'll try to facilitate your questions in this sessions. Shall we proceed to the Q&A?
Yes.
Okay, so the first questions, it's directed to Ibu Finita. It's from Pak Akun, Pak Andreas Akun, one of our colleagues in English department. Hello, Pak Akun. Bu Finita, the question is, can you specify the presence that you mentioned? Is it social present? Is it psychological, or it's just merely digital or virtual presence? That's a question from Pak Akun. Perhaps I'll just let Bu Finita to answer it first.
Okay, thank you, Bu Maria, and hello, Pak Akun. Salam kenal. Well, probably in my reflection, I simplifies the idea of be present there. Well, being present is there are so many angles in being present. We can see it from the social presence, where we share, we show our that we care to our students and we have empathy to them. We are now in the same storm probably. And then we also have a kind of teaching presence where we design the material for them and deliver it for the students. That's a teaching presence. And the last one, probably cognitive presence, when students got problems, when they have to do the assignment, and we can give support, we can give guidance to them, things like that. So it's not merely being there virtually, but we can be there from many different angles. That's what I can say, Pak Akun. Back to you, Mbak Maria.
All right, so being present in different angles is not only one side, but also teaching presence, cognitive presence, and we put also our hearts on our students.
Yeah,
right, thank you very much. All right, thank you for such a brief answer, and it's really comprehensive. The second question, this is from Yesi Hidayat, Jakarta. Again, it's the question delivered to you, Bu Finita. Hello, Bu Finita. Do you think that learners should record or show proof of their activities while in the watering hole sessions? This is very interesting.
This is not a must. The idea of me asking them to record their video is not only about recording what they did in the watering holes, but giving me the product of the conversation. But I believe there is something happening behind the scene, behind the recording version. They talk, they chat, probably they complain about the assignment, things like that. That's also considered watering hole that I don't know, that I don't want to know. So I believe there's a foreseen and the back scene of the watering hole.
Okay, so well, maybe if I can extend the questions regarding watering hole, what about the back scene, the one that you say? Do you usually monitor, or will you be involved in the process, or it's just okay? That's your part, and I just want to see the final product of it.
Well,
is it?
It's not that I don't care about the process, but there are times that we can trust our students on doing things, and probably
Okay.
they can solve things without the presence of the teacher. But now that they know I'm there in the Telegram group, every time they got problems, they will pop up in the Telegram group and ask questions. Can I do this? Can I do that? What if something happened, and so on. So now that we are online, I cannot see what happened to my students, but they know I'm there.
Okay. So you are there in the group along with them, and sometimes they throw questions in the group, in the forum as well.
Yeah. And I believe they have smaller
group.
Telegram group or WhatsApp
yes.
group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm curious about. But anyway, okay, it's good to know that the process is there. And actually, the next speakers, for all of the speakers here, for Pak Irfan, Bu Finita, and also Pak Willy. The question comes from Ibu Paramita. And the question is, what are the most essential skills that we need as lecturers or teachers, right, to build relationship with our students during this online learning?
Yes.
So, Pak Willy, go ahead.
Pak Irfan first.
Okay, maybe I can. All right, Pak Irfan.
I'll try. Thank you for the question, Bu Paramita. Yeah, I think in order for us to build rapport, we must first listen. Yeah, we listen first. Perhaps not the way that we have been usually listening.
Yes.
Yeah, perhaps it's metaphorically listening, like you like Bu Finita story, yeah, just now, when she has been engaging with students through Instagram groups or any group, and then after that, after listening, then you can respond to them, and then use proper teaching methodology, perhaps like what Pak Willy has introduced. Yeah. So I think in a way our teaching methodology should be based on what students need and our knowledge of our students. So that back then, again, going back to how explicit we are in trying to find, their background of knowledge. We need to know how in which areas are they struggling, and then by basing on that knowledge, then we can actually build something like a platform for them to learn together. So again, to repeat my answer, it's just first is the most important one is listening skill, and based on the information that you are getting from the information, then you can build like a learning platform that is suitable to meet their needs. I think that will be my answer.
Yes, excellent answer, Pak Irfan. I like the first one, being a good listener. Sometimes the students just want to, air their grievances. Seem complaining, but actually they are not. They just want to be heard. So they just want you to listen to them. Listen about their problems. You may not be able to solve all their problems, but the fact that you're listening is the first important step. Number two, smile a lot more. I think students can really appreciate teachers who smile a lot more when you are teaching, when you are interacting with the students. Yeah. And point number three, this is probably the most important one, is increase your likability index. Be more likable. I think students learn more, they can relate more with teachers who are likable. If you want to be more likable, I think Ibu Maria is going to organize another session, another webinar.
For sure, but that was actually what pops up in my thought.
Likability, yes, it's an extremely important skill that unfortunately many of us do not have. How to become more likable to your students. Your students learn best from teachers who are more likable than teachers who are not likable. And that is how you build your relationship. That's how you build your rapport with your students. Yeah, there's actually a book that I came across a few years ago. And the name of the book is so interesting. It's The Law of Likability. Ada 11 laws of likability. Let me try to find the book on the internet, and then I'll share the title and the author with you very soon. I think Finita has a lot to say as well about how to build a rapport and relationship with students. Finita?
Thank you, Pak Willy. Second to you, I agree to all your statement about especially being likable. Once I remember my trainer mentioned that if you cannot even smile to your students, please stop being a teacher. Another thing probably to answer the questions is I'm going back to my reflection, being flexible. Sometimes teachers really want the students to do something the way the teachers want the students to do it, while actually now there are many ways to accomplish things. So we need to be flexible in terms of the process and the final product that we are expecting, and also the due date. That's what I can say. Back to you, Bu Maria.
So let me wrap up. We have to put our ears, right? We have to listen a lot. and then based on what we listen, then we can let's say do something about it to have more engagement with our students. And we have to smile and increase likability. There you go, there's the book, 11 laws of likability. All right, thank you very much, Willy, for sharing. It's interesting. And also flexibility, right, as Ibu Finita add. Maybe, let's say I remember that when I go through the education in bachelor degree, at being a teacher, it's like being on stage. Whatever happened behind the screen, we always have to be happy. We always have to present the best for our students because they are actually our audience. Right. Thank you very much for the answer. And I guess the next questions, this is also for all of the speakers. What do you think of the method in asynchronous learning, such as in Udacity and a long period of learning time, like 3 months with minimum human interaction? So basically, there are online asynchronous learning that will take like around 3 months or even more than that long period of time, and there is no synchronous interactions like this. So the question is, what do you think about it? And then, as far as the one who put this question is no, human interactions only by their on-demand coaching. So human interaction in this kind of asynchronous learning sometimes is just by demand. If there is no request for synchronous learning, then nothing, right? So what do you think about this kind of asynchronous learning process? Perhaps.
Finita is an expert on asynchronous learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, Finita, talk a little bit about the materials, the packaging. I think that is the key. Yeah.
If you pay attention to my story, the two anecdotes that I mentioned about Farid and Johnny, Farid in industrial curriculum, he was okay with the kind of asynchronous pedagogy where it is exactly like that. The synchronous is on demand when the student doesn't need any one-on-one tutorial, and that's okay. And mostly he didn't take that voucher for synchronous training. But for our students, if you look at the 3 learning space that I mentioned before, we really need to build connection with our students. It's not about whether it is synchronous or asynchronous. It's not about whether we are using video conference or not, but it's about the connection. It's about the communication that we build. If, for example, the context doesn't support us to use Zoom like this, we can still connect with our students using text messages, using voice audio, but we still need to build connection to make sure that our student is on the same boat with us. That's what I can share, Bu Maria.
Oh, okay. Right. So basically, video, it doesn't mean that video should be there. We have different channels as alternative to engage with our online students.
Yes.
Right. I guess, but Willy want to say something?
Plus, yes, I think it's very important for us to remember that these days, synchronous and asynchronous materials will have to be interactive in nature. I think technology has allowed us these days to package our materials in such a way that it allows students to interact with the materials and also interact with the instructor. Let me just give you an example. Let's say that you have put together PowerPoint slides and you want to put that in the learning management system as part of students' synchronous learning. Well, in the old days, I think that's what we did. I mean, we just put our PowerPoint slides and put it there for the students to look at. But these days, that should not be happening, because nowadays, even PowerPoint slides can be very interactive. I think one tool, I think Finita knows a lot about this. One tool that teachers use now is Peer Deck, for example. Yeah, so Peer Deck allows you to add interactivity in your PowerPoint slides. So for example, after slide number 3 or number 4, students will have to stop. It won't move on until they respond to questions that are available in their PowerPoint slides. Once they have responded, then they can move on to the next 3 or 4 or 5 slides. So bite-sized learning, very interactive, that the applications is now available for you to add that interactivity. The same thing with YouTube video. Who wants to watch a 1 hour long YouTube video nowadays? Only a few people. Like Finita, Dewi probably will watch YouTube video for the whole night, but students will not do that. So what you do is you need to break it up, to break up your YouTube videos into smaller chunks. Not literally splitting your videos, but inserting questions, discussion questions along the way. And applications are available, like, I think if I remember correctly, Finita, it's Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is one of those tools that you can use to insert discussion questions. So that is how you can get the students to be interested to continue learning for a longer period of time. Again, time is always an issue. If you ask the students to sustain their interest for a longer period of time, then the materials will have to be interesting and motivating. The task will also have to be interesting and motivating. So there has to be something there for the students to stay motivated. Yeah, motivation is not just a one-off thing. I think the next important thing about motivation is how we can help our students to stay motivated for 1 month, for 2 months, for 3 months, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because in online setting, engagement decrease in the end of the course, oftentimes, right?
Exactly.
So so yeah, I can note down peer deck and Edpuzzle, and it's going to be very good insight for us. But before we go to the next question, I would like to invite Pa Irfan. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think in addition to what Bu Finita and Pa Willy have explored, yeah, I agree to what, all the points that they have addressed. But I would like to see this from the current phenomenon. Yeah. I think I think now we have seen more and more that learning has becoming more and more personalized. Yeah. So the students decide to what materials they would like to access. And when they access it as well is also another issue. I think there's in an aspect of humanizing aspect. I think it reflects the experience. Yeah, so you can tell that, hey, when it is personalized, then it is perhaps humanized. That is, I put that as a question mark. But so Willy has explored it from the perspective of the materials that we need to develop. Let's make sure that these materials is motivating for students to keep coming back. Yeah. So, but I think in a way, one having those options and then having the freedom for students to start, to end the sessions, to access which materials they want is also, I think it's an extension of what I had in the past. So I think it's a good thing that it is happening now. Yeah. So I think that will be for me.
All right. So yeah, after going through now, I just remember maybe it's going to be extensions from the previous questions, that talking about packaging online learning especially in asynchronous setting, it's a big matter because like for example assessment, that might be another topic that we can discuss on the next cast by Irfan. Online learning assessment. that's also sometimes it is a big issue because in online learning, let's say especially in MOOC, we have hundreds of students, and their setting, their context might be so different from one student to another student. So the next issue, right, in terms of engagement in asynchronous learning, and it's also related to our next questions by Ibu Nina from Bandung. Sometimes we think that the assessment is easy for some students, or the materials are easy for some students, but sometimes it's difficult for them. But since this is asynchronous, how can we measure that? How can we put ourselves on their shoes? How do we know about it? How is it possible for us to adjust? Uh, so maybe you have some tips on this thing. Maybe I can start with Pak Irfan first.
All right. I think first, first of all, we need to identify the objectives of the materials that we are producing. If we are going to achieve those learning objectives, then we should be able to measure it, like Willy and Finita has explored earlier. It should be perhaps bit by bit. Yeah, we don't just go as a whole big chunk and then we test students, or then we assess students based on those big chunks at the same time. So it was demonstrated very nicely by Pak Willy when he was explaining about the 70s, right? Oh, sorry, Pak Willy, it was 6, about the 60s, yeah. And then you need to go, bit by bit. We cannot just have students to do everything all at once. Yeah, you have 1 hour video lesson, and then you test students based on that 1 hour video. I think that is one way that we can try to assess or evaluate students' progress. Yeah, do it bit by bit.
All right, so bit by bit. Okay, now what about Pak Willy? Perhaps you'd like to add?
I'll pass it on to Finita. Finita has been doing online assessment for many months now.
Well, my class usually based on project. So the bit by I apply the bit by the bit thing. Usually I have some kind of pit stop. For example, when I make a digital storytelling project, then I will start with the storyboard, and then I will stop there. I assess their storyboard and move on to the next one, making the script. We are going to assess the script making and so on. And the assessment process is not only done by me as a teacher, because it's going to be overwhelming too. So I do a kind of peer checking activities. They help me checking their friends by using some kind of rubric. So that's what I did. Not only the final product, the digital story, but also some pit stop that I created in the middle or along the way of the project.
Yeah, that's a great example. Project-based learning or problem-based learning or inquiry-based learnings are all examples of student-centered pedagogies. So that's how you do things, and that's how you assess things. So the assessment that we normally do will have to change because of the way we now approach the teaching and learning in the classroom. In a project-based situation, you don't just, for example, assess the final product. Yes, the final product will have to be assessed as well, but that is given a weightage, maybe 30, 40%. But it's the process. I think we all believe that the process is important too. So we need to also assess the different processes, that the different ways that the students do the project alone or together in collaboration with their peers. So different ways of doing things. I know what you're thinking. I mean, it's going to take a lot of time. Yes, it is going to take a lot of time. I think the thinking now is for us to think about how we can sort of, use assessment as a basis for improving teaching. I think if you do that, then spending a bit more time doing assessment is not a bad thing, because assessment eventually feeds into our teaching. Now, if you're thinking that, well, I have a lot of students, think about China. I attended a talk recently, and China, starting from this year, is introducing massively, a form of assessment called portfolio assessment. This is happening for all school students in China. We are talking about more than, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of students. And this has been sanctioned by the government. The Ministry of Education in China has decided that the way we assess our students' multiple choice tests will have to stop, because that is not helping at all. In fact, it can be very harmful for our students. So they're introducing a new way of assessing our students, portfolio assessment. And that is a student-friendly assessment, because students are assessed on the process, yeah, and also on the product of their learning, which is very much in line with what I've been sharing today, student-centered learning. I think slowly it's going to happen. Now, recently, I don't know if I should be sharing with you, I heard from a colleague in Bandung that Mas Menteri, your Minister of Education, is suggesting, is encouraging universities in Indonesia, maybe universities first, but eventually also schools, that universities should adopt problem-based learning, inquiry-based learning. In other words, it's student-centered learning. Basically, it's the student that is placed at the forefront of learning. Now, here is a problem. How do you solve the problem? Now, the teacher's job is to provide resources, to provide directions, to provide a structure. It's not that the teachers is not teaching anymore. The teachers continue to teach, but in a different ways. Yeah. So what you do is how you can empower your students, making use of their own resources, their thinking resources, their emotional engagement in the learning process. And I think that is the way to go. I think it can be applied whether you teach language, literature, science, mathematics, you can do that. Yeah.
Wow.
So problem-based learning.
Problem-based learning. So
Yeah.
that's a big note for us all here, that we're moving towards problem-based learning. So in that case, if we move towards, let's say, project-based or problem-based learning, then how we position ourselves as a teacher, Pak Willy?
Well,
how should we give feedback? What are the strategies to give the students feedback in this case?
Again, the feedback will have to be ongoing. The feedback will be ongoing, and you know, the teachers and the students should probably be working together, developing the rubric, asking students, how do you want to be evaluated? And then there's a lot of negotiation going on. Of course, we should not just ask the students fully, okay, that is how they want to be assessed, and that's how you do it. There has to be some, you know, space for negotiation. Yeah, but I think we are moving in the right direction there. It has to be more problem-based. It has to be more, you know, more engaging for the students to want to learn together with you. But remember, T1 is the teacher. T1 continues to be the most important actor in the learning process. But it's a different role that you have to play now, instead of somebody who dispenses knowledge. Okay, here is my knowledge, you learn this knowledge just like that. I think that model of learning will have to go. Yeah, because nowadays knowledge is not the monopoly of teachers. Actually, teachers do not have a lot of knowledge. Schools do not have a lot of knowledge. Universities do not have a lot of knowledge. Knowledge is everywhere now. Knowledge is in the internet. And that's the new world that we have to deal with.
So the push and pull, right, Pak Willy, to play the role. When is the timing that we have to stand in front of the class, and when is the timing to sit down together with the students and do the dialogue? That's all about, well, as you mentioned, it's about timing. It's a push and pull as well.
Yes. Yes, the keyword, I mentioned this very briefly, the keyword in education these days is this idea that the teacher and the students should work together to co-create knowledge.
Constructivism.
Co-building, yes. Co-construct knowledge. And that is the best form of learning. And that is the best form of teaching as well.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of statements here in chat room. I do agree. I agree.
Yeah.
So, right. That's basically approval that we have to co-create, and even for rubric and assessment, we can sit down together with our students to construct a rubric. That's interesting. If I can move on to the next questions, this is for going back to Bu Finita. I'd like to ask, in some instances, students have fear of anxiety in interacting within teaching process, whether it's online or even face-to-face learning. So in this case, how should the teacher do in order to encourage students to interact, so the students will not feel anxious anymore?
I think I will just copy paste Pak Willy's explanation about being likable. If we are likable, then students will lower down their anxiety. But in my case, some students decide to ask their friends to ask me. So sometimes there's a head of the class or the one who is responsible to ask questions to the teacher. So I don't mind with that. I don't push my students to interact with me.
Okay. Right. We can start from what they like as well, perhaps, right? We can
Yeah, sometimes
discuss.
I ask questions, say, for example, ask whether or not they like the materials, or is it too difficult? Is it too easy? Is it okay with them? Do they have any comment? Things like that. But it's not a must for them to respond.
There is a very experienced language teacher in the audience, and the name of the person is Pak Hanung Triyono.
Hello, Pak Hanung. Pak Hanung
Triyoko. Pak Hanung,
Nice.
Pak Hanung, share your tips, please. What happens if your students don't want to interact, don't want to talk, don't want to speak? What do you usually do? Tell them to go home?
Thank you, Pa Willy, for giving me this opportunity, and very nice to see you again after some time, Pa Willy, and also Pa Irfan, Bu Maria, and Finita. Thank you very much. Well, in that case, I tend to force students, or I don't think the word force is good enough, but I encourage students to always have a closer group of students, kind of peer group of students. So I provoke them to have this small group and do a lot of things together as a team, something like that, Pak Willy.
Good idea, Pak Hanung. Yes. Yeah. Well, I think the starting point is always this: make sure that our classroom environment is such that the students feel safe.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
They feel safe emotionally, that if they make mistakes, nobody is going to laugh at them. I think that's very important. Yeah. They need to feel emotionally safe. And they also need to feel mentally or intellectually or cognitively safe as well. That means the kind of environment that allows students to make mistakes, to explore, things that are not imaginable at the moment, to be creative, for example. So free to explore, free to make mistakes. And when students make mistakes, everyone laugh together with them, not at them, but with them. Again, this is our job as a teacher. How we can create this healthy, safe classroom environment is probably the first step that we need to do before we even teach in the classroom. Make sure that everyone feels accepted, everyone feels safe when they participate in the lesson, either as a listener or either as somebody who contributes in the discussion, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to using English, which is not their first language, which is a foreign language for most of our students, what can we do? Now, there's an interesting development recently in the English language professional discussion. There's a method called translanguaging. I don't know if you have heard about this idea, translanguaging. The idea is you should allow the students to use whatever language they want to use, in particular their first language. Yeah, allow them to interact, to discuss using Bahasa Jawa maybe, or Bahasa Indonesia, whatever language. And then slowly, you help the students to maybe express themselves bilingually. Jadi step by step gitu ya. Pakai bahasa Jawa dulu, first using the local language, and then use a mixture of English and the local language, and gradually, slowly, they may be able to express themselves using Bahasa Inggris solely. So there are scaffolding, there are guidelines that you can use in the classroom.
Which is quite postmodern, right,
I
Willy?
think so,
and it's also later on related to the identity of English and also the use of English in as a foreign language and so on and so on. So basically, basically the sense of community should be there, if I can say, right? And there is no some kind of oh, I'm higher than you, and therefore you have to follow what I say. We are on the same page, and it's dialogical. That's the key word, and we actually share the same thing and gain the same thing. Thank you very much, Pa Hanung, for being here. It's very nice to see you virtually after all these years.
Yes.
Okay. So actually we have a lot of questions, if I can be honest, to everybody here, but unfortunately we have very limited time. Right now is 11:36, and maybe we can only accommodate one more questions, and this is going back to assessment. Actually, Bu Finita, Pak Willy, Pak Irfan, there are a lot of questions related to assessment. These questions: how can we ensure assessment integrity when engaging students learning through online platform? So how can we ensure the integrity of online assessment? So who should start this? Is it going back to Bu Finita? Bu Finita, start opening the microphone when it's related to assessment.
Well, actually, I was about to ask question: what kind of assessment that the one who asked provide? Why does he have to ask about the integrity? Because probably if it is a kind of multiple choice assessment, and then it's a kind of issue that students crack the key and things like that. But for my context, the assessment that I did is personalized. They cannot Google it. The answer is not in Google. So I can make sure that the validity, unless one problem, Google Translate. It's hard. It's hard to avoid to protect them from using it. So I support them on using it. Yeah.
So some people maybe some people say that it's also a process of learning when they use Google Translate.
Yeah,
that they have to move one step forward after using Google Translate. Then what's next? That's
what I did. I support them to use Google Translate, but then remind them to be aware of the word that they use, look at it again, review, or ask the other students to read whether or not they understand the writing or not.
Maybe Pak Irfan or Pak Willy would like to add something?
Yes, go ahead, Pak Irfan.
Yeah, thank you, Pak. I think Bu Nina has added another keyword
like cheating.
On integrity, like cheating, or perhaps jockeying. Yeah, during this this time of the decade. Yeah, so I think with the online assessment, I think that is one of the risks that we have to tackle. There are many ways, in terms of technology. Perhaps if you take like a TOEFL or IELTS test, like online, and then you will have to show your face for the scanning of stuff like that, or even your eyes. I think technology-wise, this is something that people have been trying to have been trying to do, like to prevent this from happening. And then in terms of our approach as a teacher, I think we morally we can instill this being honest thing from the very beginning, from the very start, because it's really getting harder to just tell them do not cheat, or do not practice anything that will lead you to accuse of being cheating or something like that. It's kind of hard because there will always be ways to for students, when they are assigned to write a paper, perhaps it's going to be, there will be ways for them to eventually get a way out of this. But I think, again, I'm not I don't teach character building or something, but I think while we teach, we really need to instill this integrity, morality in terms of achieving or trying, in terms of trying to get what they want to get in a course. I hope that answers the question, but this is just from the different angle of seeing this assessment issue.
All right, I get that.
Yes.
Or maybe Willy would like to ask as well.
Very,
Add as well.
yeah, just very briefly. If we are not doing fixed response type of questions, one answer, fill in the blank type of questions, then we should be okay. I don't think there should be any issue with the test integrity, the test validity and things like that. If you ask questions that require students to think, to come up with answers, innovative answers, I don't think there should be any issue whether you do it online or on site. So,
okay.
Well, by the way, we should move away from doing multiple choice kind of test, and that's the kind of test that should not be used anymore in education. I think this is something that is has been used for many years because it's easy. It doesn't take a lot of time for you to mark the test papers. But education is anything but easy. If you're looking for the quality of education, then we need to move away from the kind of questions that require one correct answers. The world is much more interesting than being able to provide one correct answer.
So we can open up to knowledge creations by opening different types of assessment in the end, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, there are a lot of questions about assessment. Pak Irfan, maybe next time we can open up to another sessions related to assessment, and also the likability thing. We can discuss about that further. But unfortunately, it's almost 12 o'clock and we have to close the sessions. But I'd like, on behalf of the organizers, the Comedy English Department, BINUS, and also GreatNusa, I'd like to express our gratitude to Pak Willy, Bu Finita, Pak Irfan for making time, and also all of the participants who comes from different institutions, different countries, different affiliations. It's really glad to see you all here, and maybe we can have another forum, or quote unquote, it becomes reunion at some point. And we will keep you updated regarding the next class, and it will be updated through our website, English Department BINUS website, Facebook, and also Instagram. Before we close our session, maybe we can have our favorite session, picture session. Pak Nico, maybe you can help us. I'd like to invite everybody to open the camera and join us on the picture session. Pak Nico?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, first page. 1, 2, 3.
4 pages.
Yes.
So this is the first page. Well, we don't know where we are, but just keep smiling as a teacher. Open your camera.
Okay. Second page. Third page. Okay. Last page. Okay. Thank you. It's done.
All right. Thank you very much, Pak Nico. And regarding, there are several questions as well regarding survey and certificates. So in the end of this session, later on after the closing, you will see QR code, and then you can scan the QR code, and would love to have your input and feedback regarding our webinars. And later on, your certificate will be sent directly to your email. We have your email, and by this Zoom room, later on we can also get the attendance of and also your participations. Right, so Pak Nico is displaying the QR code here. Okay, thank you very much once again. And I guess it's a wrap. And if I can conclude everything, the 3 sessions already provide us insights and also best practices on how to humanize online learning, starting from the reading activities, that it's possible for us to achieve higher level of reading comprehensions by through online setting. And also from Bu Finita, we also learned that there are three types of material delivering that we can do. We can do campfire, we can do watering hole, and we can also do the cave. So it's up to you. How are you going to put them in your class? You can play around with the proportions. And also from Pak Willy, we learned that student-centered learning should be there in online learning. We can consider the 60s. And I remember clearly, Pak Willy, we are in the center as teacher. And then we have to consider our teaching method, the text, teaching method, the text, the task, the test, and technology. Yay. All right, so really glad to have you here, and hopefully we can see each other virtually while crossing fingers for face-to-face next time. Thank you. See you all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bu
much.
Maria.